Eagle Communications is your ultimate business partner. We provide business class phone with customizable features and fast, reliable internet. Your knowledgeable team at Technology Solutions has a broad base of IT services to meet your needs. Let the experts at Marketing Solutions get your message to the right people on the best platforms. The only piece missing is your business. Call Eagle Communications today at 877-61-EAGLE.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Welcome again to another Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks to our producer, editor, and behind the camera work of Brandon Cooley from Eagle Communications. We are in our studios with Dr. Rose Helens-Hart, Assistant Professor of Business Communication at Fort Hays State University, now in her third year at Fort Hays State University, talking about management conflict in the workplace. It's the newest in the series of programs from the Management Development Center at Fort Hays State. Dr. Rose Helens-Hart teaches courses in professional development as well as in business and corporate communication. Her research interests are in the areas of employability and identity management. She completed her PhD in Organizational Communication from the University of Kansas, a master's degree in International Studies from North Carolina State University, and a bachelor's degree in Journalism and Mass Communication from the University of Alaska in Anchorage. She enjoys teaching, consulting, and assisting people in pursuing their professional communication goals. And we're happy to have her as part of our Community Connection. Dr. Helens-Hart, who can benefit from this training?
Well, we know that managers can spend up to 20 to 40% of their time managing workplace conflict. So certainly from the Management Development Center, we think that managers would really benefit from this type of workshop. But also employees that might not oversee other people but interact with others in the workplace, and I'd say that's just about everybody, would really benefit from this workshop, even if they're not experiencing conflict currently. It's always good to prepare yourselves for future encounters of any kind and be able to assist others in the workplace on managing their conflict if they're unequipped at the time.
One day there might not be a conflict, the next day everything might fall apart then, possibly.
Somebody new might enter into the organization, you encounter a different client that you're unfamiliar with, don't really know their desires and interests, and all of a sudden you find yourself kind of at odds with maybe your interests or your concerns, or just how you think things should be done within the organization.
So employees and employers both can benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
The event is March 7th. They are holding it in Hanson Hall's meeting room from 1 to 4:30 p.m. Registration fee is $119. And if you're a Hays Area Chamber of Commerce member, you'll be able to get a 15% discount code through the Chamber, because obviously the Chamber of Commerce in Hays has a vested interest in managing conflict in workplaces. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the course overview, if you would, Dr. Helens-Hart.
Okay, so in this workshop, we're going to go through just generally conceptualizing what conflict is, because a lot of times people think it's a fight. And that's not really how we're going to talk about conflict. We're going to talk about conflict as an opportunity to resolve differences, to make perspectives align, and come to conclusions and resolutions that will make the organization better and stronger. Maybe not all the time you're going to get your way, but you should be able to go through conflict with a respect for the process and understand how and why you approach conflict in the way you do, and that will help you work with others in a better way.
And this overview will work for managers as well as employees then? Absolutely.
We encourage people from across an organization to be involved, and we'll have scaled activities so that you can share your experiences no matter where they are from in the organizational hierarchy chart.
All right, let's go through those course objectives if we could, one by one. There are about 5 objectives that have been stated. Nice little handout too, by the way, you might be able to see in several different locations that is developed through the Management Development Center at Fort Hays State University, which kind of explains the entire program. Let's start with understanding common causes of workplace conflict?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, conflict is a process when we perceive a threat to maybe our interests, our concerns, our desires and values within an organization for this particular workshop. Though these skills could absolutely be used for interpersonal conflict, maybe in the home or with friends. So we're going to start off with those causes. In the workplace, they can often arise from changes, maybe new technology being introduced, new organizational members. You might have clashes of personality, incivility, but really I think a lot of conflict boils down to a different perception of what is needed for an organization. So I think that we should pursue one interest, someone thinks we should pursue a different interest, and maybe we have scarce resources, so who will receive the resources to pursue those different interests?
That could translate to family situations
Absolutely.
as well, couldn't it? Dr.
Absolutely. Who's
Helens-Hart?
going to get the car? Who gets bigger allowance? All sorts of things like that.
Spoken like a true family member, I would say, Dr. Helens-Hart. Practice conflict management strategies. Practicing helps, huh?
Absolutely. So sometimes just our general personalities will lead us to approach conflict in a certain way, and certainly the way that we're brought up and how our families have resolved conflicts and our past experiences will influence how we just, off the cuff will manage conflict. But there are strategies that we can purposefully use and think about when we are entering into a conflict situation to make it better. So some of the things we can do are collect more information about it. We might have a knowledge deficit. We might not understand what the other person truly needs. I was involved in a conversation the other day that was a little bit more contentious than I would have liked for my day-to-day. And I was venting to somebody and asking for advice on, how should I handle this if it happens again? And the person asked me, well, what does this person need? And it completely changed the way I thought about it. I hadn't thought about what that person needs. I only thought about how it was a perceived threat to my credibility or my position in the organization. And so I thought, okay, well, the next time I approach this person, I could start with that question. So what do you need from me right now? And what do you need from this conversation? And that way I can help that person get what they need, but also help them understand what I need.
Wow, sounds like you're basically saying, put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Absolutely. There's a host of things going on in everybody else's life that's none of our business, so we'll never know about, or they just hadn't thought to mention it to you because they wasn't sure that it was relevant at the same time. I call it the baby in the back seat, and I say I call it, but I didn't really make it up. It came from a letter to the editor in a Minnesota newspaper, and it's often used by another business consultant named Meg Wheatley, and she talks about this experience of a woman being stopped at a red light, and there's somebody behind her. And the person behind her is honking because she's not going on the red light, and she has to exit the car to do something in the back seat, and the person behind her is all fed up, and they swerve around her and speed off. And what the person didn't realize in the car behind her is that she was trying to attend to her infant child in the back seat who was choking. So the person in the car behind, no clue of why this person wasn't going, just knew it was an inconvenience, it was disrupting their day, a threat to get to where they needed to get on time. But we always need to think, what's the baby in the back seat here? What else could be going on? And
people bring different concerns and issues day to day, either in the workplace or the family situation, don't they? Because things change.
Absolutely. And we have different values. We know that all decisions are based upon some sort of value. In an organization, it might be to develop a client relationship, or it might be to pursue a bigger profit margin. So sometimes those values will conflict, and we don't even know that the person has something else different in mind of what we should be pursuing.
We're talking about course objectives. The next in the series is to assess personal conflict styles. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So we'll be taking an assessment that will help you, in general, plot yourself or whether or not your preferred conflict style is competitive, collaborative, compromising, avoidant, or accommodating. So Do we normally try to fight it out and win, or are we trying to come to a different solution that maybe we hadn't thought of before? Are we giving a little, getting a little? Are we completely avoiding or caving in and saying, okay, whatever you want, we'll do? And understanding how you normally approach conflict will help demystify why you may not be getting what you want out of those situations, or why other people might be leaving the situation not in a very good mood. Maybe you're really competitive and pushed your way through, and you don't really understand at the end, well, why doesn't this person like me anymore, or why is this person avoiding me in the future? Well, it might have been because they had a bad interaction with you before because of a conflict style you're using.
So you basically have to understand yourself and where you're coming from to be able to relate to another person in family or workplace situation.
Absolutely. Reflection is very important.
And learning best practices for offering critical feedback. Now, would that apply to employers as well as employees on feedback?
Yes. So the literature I'm pulling from here is on organizational dissent. And typically that literature approaches it from moving upward. So coming down from the employee's perspective, providing critical feedback above, but it can also work for moving critical feedback down rather than being told you're not doing something in a correct way and to change your ways, or vice versa, telling the boss they're not doing something right or the organization is doing it right. We come at it with more equity and trying to say, okay, here's a problem in an objective way. Here are some of the facts that relate to this problem, and here's a potential solution. So when it comes to dissent strategies and critical feedback, we always want to try to package it with some sort of solution, but also do some fact finding to make sure that we're not going in there unaware of why a decision was made or why things are done the way they are.
Dr. Helens-Hart, would this work for small businesses as well as large businesses where there might be a more personal interaction on a day-to-day basis in small business settings, as opposed to large businesses where you may not have nearly as much contact? Would those strategies that you're talking about here, would they work for both?
Sure. I think they're really going to work for businesses that may not have had the best interaction between different levels before, or between supervisors, employees, anybody giving feedback. And that can happen in a small business, and that can happen in a multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 company. So it kind of depends on the personalities and the styles of the people who are in the organization. And maybe, it's a small business, everybody knows each other well, they're very comfortable giving feedback, and that's wonderful. But maybe there are some things that can be done to improve it, because we might have been approaching feedback before and taking it really personally. So how can we try to depersonalize a little bit of that and move it toward how to better the organization overall?
Well, that's an important point, I think, because sometimes, regardless of whether the criticism is coming from a parent or a child or employee or a manager, sometimes we do internalize and take it personally, don't we?
Absolutely.
We have to separate that, don't we?
Absolutely. And it's a lot easier to, be pretty rude to people who we are the closest to, because we know them so well and we don't have a real filter on, or people that we don't know at all. So we can think about customer service situations where someone is really rude to the other person because they just see them as basically the body that's supposed to fill the need rather than another human being. So either extreme can cause a lot of issues when we don't think about, okay, how do I depersonalize this? How do I stick to the facts? How do I take into the fact that this is another human being who has emotions in front of me?
Wow. Sounds like quite a course. 1 to 4:30, Managing Conflict in the Workplace at the Hanson Hall Meeting Room. March 7th is the date. Registration fee $119, or for Hayes Area Chamber of Commerce members, a 15% discount code. Through the Fort Hays State University Management Development Center, Assistant Professor of Business Communication at Fort Hays State, Dr. Rose Helens-Hart, our community connection.
Eagle Communications is your complete business solution with options to fit any budget. We provide business class phone with customizable features and fast, reliable internet. Your knowledgeable team at Technology Solutions has a broad base of IT services to meet your needs. Let the experts at Marketing Solutions get your message to the right people on the best platforms. Eagle Communications will build your personalized business plan, Call us at 877-61-EAGLE.
It's time to explore the great indoors.
Pirates ahead, all hands on deck and ready the cannons.
Where imagination has no boundaries.
And then the princess rode the dragon.
And fun is limitless.
Captain, we're ready for liftoff.
Explore the great indoors with Eagle Communications, with TV and internet starting at $84.99 for 2 years.
Welcome to our Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks as always to the producer, editor, and behind the camera work of Brandon Cooley. We're in the studios with the Drug and Alcohol Wellness Network Coordinator, Bob Duffy, from the Kelly Center on campus at Fort Hays State University. Bob is also co-chair of the Fort Hays State Food and Hunger Initiatives Committee, which is the focus of our Community Connection. Who's your co-chair, Bob?
Peter Trammell from the Philosophy Department. So the committee is a cross between student affairs and the academic side of the university.
What's the purpose of the committee, Bob?
To try and provide a resource for students who are kind of at a disadvantage when it comes to their finances. So we have two different focuses. One is the food pantry, the Tiger Food Exchange in the library. The other is that we actually have a garden just down the hill from the Fort Hays State University Foundation.
We visited in one of our community connections to the garden, and it was even flourishing the time we were there, which was not necessarily the growing season.
Sure. We do actually have a greenhouse there, so we're able to start planting earlier in the year than would be expected outdoors. And we try to keep that as productive as possible.
And this was even done with the help of the Agriculture Department at Fort Hays State too, with Dr. Jean.
Yes, Dr. Gleichner has been a great supporter of ours over the years.
Okay, so the committee then is made up of students and faculty members, Bob? Who makes up the committee?
Well, yeah, we have our student labor students are active members of the committee, and we have 4 of those right now. So our students are heavily involved with the project, not just on doing the labor, but also in making decisions about the projects that we undertake. They decide on what food we're going to plant in the garden, when's the right time to harvest. They're the ones that are out there doing a lot of the legwork. And then the committee is made up of faculty and staff from the university, basically, that have an interest in it.
Do you see, speaking of having an interest, do you see an interest in the students that are taking on this project, Bob?
Oh,
do they have
absolutely.
a direction?
Sure. One of our students even tells his story occasionally that he was one of our first customers.
Oh.
So he, that's how he kind of got involved with it from almost the beginning.
He understood the need.
So he understands the need for what we're doing.
Why is this important, Bob?
Survey data tells us about 1/3 of our Fort Hays State University students are food insecure, meaning they're not positive where that next meal is coming from at some point during the semester. So trying to equal the playing field for them so that they're not sitting in class with their stomach grumbling, and they're able to focus on what the professor is saying, and they're able to perform in the classroom.
This is something that some of us find rather astounding, Bob. A third of the students at Fort Hays State at some point in a semester might have food insufficiency.
Yeah, they're just not sure where that next meal is coming from.
What are some of the backgrounds? What are the reasons here, Bob? What do you see happening in these students' lives?
It can be a lot of things. It can be they lose a job, they didn't do a great job budgeting, not to blame them, but sometimes that comes into play. Sometimes mom and dad, their financial situation changes. They have things going on at home. A lot of our students are not financially really secure before they even get to campus.
And a lot of times, obviously part-time job, so minimum wage in many instances, just part-time hours, which means limited income with all of the expenses that college students have to deal with.
Yeah, inflation has way outdriven the cost of living increases that have been afforded to people.
And with the availability of even the possibility of time management to be able to even work in part-time situations.
Yeah, if you're taking 15 hours of schoolwork, you basically have a 45-hour-a-week job already.
And the university has a food program, obviously, but that requires some funding as well.
Oh yeah, it's nothing's free. So
again, who determines the needs of these students? Do they come in? Do they indicate a need? Do you get references from other students who may be experiencing or seeing what they're experiencing?
No,
or
basically they just
faculty or?
We try to advertise as much as possible through our social media that the food pantry is available. You don't need to show your ID to access it or anything. You just walk in. We ask that people take 10 items or fewer each visit, and that they just write a tally that they were there. And about 3,000 students or individuals come through the food pantry each year.
3,000? Wow.
So not necessarily 3,000 individuals, but 3,000
visits, basically.
Is the better way of
This
saying
started in 2012. Well, I remember in the initial launch of this program, Shayla Mills was very involved, Fort Hays State professor, in 2012. You got a little help in 2014.
Yes, the Kansas Health Foundation funded, I believe, and I was not part of the committee at this time, I believe it was $60,000 as an initial startup fee for the garden and student labor, and to really move it to where it is today.
And really the garden's expanded. As you say, when we were there was no greenhouse. Now there's a greenhouse, so you've got an expanded capability there.
Yeah, we can start planning a little bit earlier in the growing season and get a head start to produce things while students are still on campus in the spring. And then throughout the summer, we have the growing season for everything else that's outside. So
it's a learning situation as well as being able to provide some fresh produce, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. The students that help work with the garden and in the pantry all the time they're surprised at what it is that they're learning, whether it's what time to buy what seeds or how many people we're actually impacting. It's an eye-opening experience. It has been for me the entire time that I've been on the committee.
How about the students themselves? Are they reticent to express a need, a financial need, or a need for the next meal?
Well, that's part of why we look at surveys to determine that. It's not, why are you in here? And that's why it's an open area in the library. That's why we put the food on the shelves. They come in, and a vast majority of the time there's nobody actually staffing it. It's an honor system. So
they can do it anonymously pretty much.
And that's something that's become a little bit of a really technical issue, that because we're not monitoring that, are we guaranteeing that all this is going to students, because some of our funding comes from student fees, and that money is all supposed to go towards students. So we're looking at expanding where our funding comes from at this point.
It's a delicate balance.
It's a delicate balance, because we have an unsecured area. We're not having students swipe in, and we don't want to do that, because I think people would be less likely to swipe in, because then their data is there. They worry about being identified. Although we wouldn't use it for that, it's still that appearance.
Well, over the years then, since 2012 when it was created, through 14 and now 18. How's it doing? How's the Tiger Food Exchange doing? Quantity-wise, as well as getting the word out, as you say, through different media on campus?
Well, a couple of things have happened. One, we've increased our volume in a couple of different ways. Each year at Convocation, we ask faculty and staff to bring in a non-perishable food item, and all that gets carted over to our area, and our students stock it and check all the dates and do all of the inventorying and everything, and then it goes out to the shelves so that students can take advantage of that. So we've increased the amount of food that we have available, and we're up to about 3,000 individuals visiting the food exchange each year. So
how can we help as members of the general public that maybe not directly associated with campus, Bob?
Oh, there's lots of ways. You can make a donation to the FHSU Foundation. We have an account there, and they can direct that money into that account. All you have to do is say, hey, I want this money to go to the food and hunger initiatives. You could send a donation to me. A lot of people know who I am around campus, and they associate me with projects like this. And I will make sure that the money goes into the foundation account. When you see local food drives, this isn't just a Fort Hays issue. This is an issue in the city of Hays as well. It doesn't have to be just to the food and hunger initiatives, to all those places in town that provide similar services. Make a donation. And
those donations, the monetary donations, you can then translate into getting the food that is necessary that you may be short on.
Yeah, and especially on Monday through Thursday, it's all non-perishable food items that are available, but we have on Fridays from 1 o'clock basically until the food is gone, we have fresh food Fridays. So we're trying to get more fresh food into the hands of people, because just because they're financially unstable at some point doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to eat a healthy diet. So we try to make sure that they have some fresh food as well as the non-perishable items.
Fort Hays State Food Pantry on the first floor of Forsyth Library, stocked with canned goods from donations as well as the monetary donations that come in, fresh vegetables from the Victory Garden on the campus, and a small supply of meat even from the university farm.
Yeah, we partner with anybody that tells us they would like to partner with us. We actually even have some non-food items that have been donated. We have a hygiene pack for women right now that's available, soap and toiletries, that type of thing.
And from courtesy of some area knitters, you also have been able to provide some scarves and gloves or hats for students who might not have warm winter gear.
Yes, absolutely. A local knitting circle somebody noticed something on Facebook. I believe it was up in Canada in either Montreal or Toronto, and this knitting circle up there took their hats and scarves that they had made, and they put a tag on them that said, "I'm not lost." And they were tying the scarves around trees and leaving the hats on branches and things, and then people would just take them. So our local knitting circle decided to do the same, and they were looking for an outlet to do that, so we started using the food pantry. And if you look on our Facebook page, you'll see photos of the items that are available.
And that Facebook page through the university contact system, right?
Yeah, Food and Hunger Initiatives, FHSU Food and Hunger Initiatives.
The goal to create an educational environment in which students, faculty, and staff could readily access healthy foods as well as nutrition information. Along the way, toiletries added, laundry items, and now scarves and hats through the Food and Hunger Initiative Committee with co-chair Bob Duffy, our community connection.
Hi, I'm Gary Shorman, President and CEO of Eagle Communications, a 100% employee-owned company. I'd like to personally thank you for selecting Eagle for your internet, television, and telephone service. By choosing Eagle, you're choosing to keep your dollars local with a company that reinvests back in your community. Let's make this a great year for your community. Check us out at eaglecom.net. Eagle Communications, our community connected.